And we're back with Mitch Donaberger of Four Color Rebellion, formerly of Four Color Rebellion.
About that.
And what are you up to right now? I know you don't have any major projects, but what are you doing just as yourself?
Fun employment. The job market is tough, and when you're set with unemployment, you kind of have all this free time to either sit with your hand down your pants or work until you're keep yourself busy.
Or both.
Hopefully both. I can't imagine anything else. What I have been doing is I've been trying to start up a couple of projects that unfortunately have sort of fizzled out, but some are getting momentum. Recently, I worked with a buddy of mine, Steve Kubitz, who he and I are what we sort of refer to ourselves as Simpsons scholars. We spend a lot of our time considering that The Simpsons and studying The Simpsons and the cultural references therein are sort of, that's our hobby. There's a scholarship to that.
Yeah.
So we pour over old records, we pour over commercial, or episode reviews back in news groups, alt.discussion.simpsons, I think it was. And going over that and sort of doing data mining for sentiment. And we recently prepared a panel for TechoShokan, which is an anime convention in Pittsburgh, 2011, called "What the Simpsons Can Teach Us About Japan." And it actually went very well. We had a full house. We had people lining up outside, pretending like we were important people.
That's awesome.
And it was great. We had an hour and a half of material based on 3 episodes of The Simpsons.
What, if you don't mind me asking, what were the 3 episodes?
There was 30 minutes over Tokyo, which is the stereotypical Simpsons visit Tokyo. The Simpsons go to Africa, Simpsons go to Norway or wherever the hell else were they from.
They killed an alligator.
Yeah, they went to Florida, I believe that was. And the second one was the Mr. Sparkle episode, which everybody knows. And that was, if anybody is curious, that's the episode where Marge becomes the listen lady for Dr. Lovejoy, Reverend Lovejoy.
That's probably in my top 10 episodes.
It's an incredible episode, and just a piece of trivia so you can impress your girlfriend, boyfriend, or significant dog, or whomever. That's the first time they mentioned Reverend Lovejoy's first name, which is Tim. Tim Lovejoy. And actually there were a number of other episodes, but they were like little snippets.
Yeah.
They covered when one fish, two fish, like poison. It was the one where.
What about the 3 eyeballed fish?
No, it's the fugu fish.
Oh, the fugu fish. Yeah.
Yeah, where Homer thinks he's going to die. There's actually a lot of pretty interesting commentary about Japanese culture in that episode. For like the first 10 minutes of it when they're going to the restaurant, and a couple of other ones, including we did some stuff. We covered the controversy with the Simpsons movie when that first came out. The Fox, who published the DVD, what they did was they actually replaced all of the normal Japanese voice actors that they've had since the beginning. They dubbed the show in Japan. They replaced them with popular Japanese actors and just completely redid all of the characters.
Yeah.
And Japanese fans of the show, I mean, there's not a whole lot of fans of The Simpsons in Japan, seeing it's not that culturally relevant, but people were protesting. Like they boycotted the DVD and they pressured Fox to the point where they actually paid for the original actors to come in and redub the episodes as an optional audio track, and then they released the DVDs, much to the chagrin of all the Japanese fans. So we covered all those things, and hopefully, if anybody is attending Otakon, we're trying to pressure Otakon to let us do the same panel there as well, considering its success.
Now, are you specifically aiming to just do these at anime conventions, or do you want to expand it into other conventions as well?
Anywhere that The Simpsons are relevant. I mean, what's great about The Simpsons is that they are sort of a cultural record of what it's like in America, and naturally they have been on the air so long, their breadth of experience and coverage is gigantic. Like, they cover absolutely anything you could think of. Comic book conventions, how we could even do farm to table conventions if we truly wanted to.
You could technically even, I think it'd be interesting for you to write to something like Monster Mania and do one just about their Halloween specials.
We certainly could, and we like to consider. I mean, there's other people out there that consider themselves Simpsons scholars too. It's something that has existed since the Simpsons first were on the air, and it's a subculture that's almost sort of persisted in little nuggets of space on the internet, and is now starting to sort of flower to the surface as people grow and age. And
Now, have you read the book Planet Simpson?
I have not.
Chance. I actually just read that book.
Okay.
And what he does is he writes 12 chapters. Each chapter focuses on a different character in the Simpsons universe, and compares its satire through various episodes with society in general.
Right.
And the most interesting chapter, in my opinion, was about Comic Book Guy.
Yeah.
And also the statements he tends to make about not just fandom, but internet culture. And one of the things that he covers, you had mentioned how you went through episode reviews on the old news groups.
Right.
He talks about the irony that one of his things he talks about is the episode with Poochie.
Right.
Poochie Scratchy Poochie Show.
Sure.
Which is the episode that has the famous worst episode ever line.
Right.
And he talks about how that episode was kind of like a fuck you to the news group fans back in the day, because they, if you look in the histories of those, shit on seasons 3, 4, and 5 as the worst episodes of Simpsons ever, whereas now in retrospect those are like the holy grail 3 seasons of the series.
It's unbelievable. And Comic Book Guy was actually, like you said, he was created as a character that sort of reinforced that they made fun of their fans. It was a channel for the writers to basically lampoon their own fans. And they make fun of this very almost viscerally in the episode where they're making the McBain Fallout.
Yeah, the Fallout Boy.
Yeah, the Fallout Boy Radioactive Man episode. And, they're Barton and Milhouse, they go to the comic book shop and they ask him, like, do you know what blah, blah, blah? And he waddles over his computer and, like, sets a taco down and starts typing. And he says, like, need to know date, lead actor, RM pick. And he sends it out on a news group. And immediately it, like, goes through different people. Like, one of them's Prince, who's, like, this, like, shriveled corpse typing on a keyboard. And eventually it ends up with, like, a single guy who's sitting underneath the board table and, like, attaches a listening device. Yeah, like a listening device to the, and that was a stab at, like, the news groups had a particular habit of leaking information about production schedules, because this is at a time when the most rapid form of communication that everybody knew of at that time, at least in Hollywood or in the small screen areas like in California. The most rapid form of communication they knew of was television or newspapers or even zines to that effect.
Well, as long as I've known you, which is quite a long time, I think you were in 6th grade when we first met.
Yeah.
You have always been a very tech-swabby person, a very internet-based person.
Sure.
I think you were always an internet entity. And I was a little bit, I guess because I'm a few years older, I distinctly remember the years before the internet and before the internet was huge, whereas you were always kind of part of it.
Yeah.
There's a lot of nostalgia from me with stuff because of the internet, specifically when I go to the movies. I went to the movies this morning and saw Scream 4, for instance, and I had already seen every trailer that played 1,000 times before because of the internet. And I remember the days where you would go to the movie, you'd have no clue what trailers you were going to see. You didn't even know what movies were coming out that summer.
Exactly.
Until you saw the trailer. And now it's, there's people who buy tickets to I Am Legend just to see the trailer for Dark Knight. I mean, because there was just already out there, okay, this is where you can see this trailer. Or Green Lantern was the trailer, its big trailer debut was before Harry Potter this summer.
Yeah.
Or this fall. Do you think this is a positive change, or do you think that, I mean, I guess it's progression, but it feels like, for me as a horror fan, seeing Scream 4, I had to actively decide that between right at midnight on Thursday until I saw it today, that I had to avoid any type of, like, Twitter or Facebook or anything that would tell me who the killer was in Scream 4 or ruin this movie for me, because it's instantaneous.
Gosh, I mean,
you can The day that Harry Potter 7 came out,
Yeah.
you couldn't check that Wikipedia for any information if you hadn't finished the book yet, because it was already going to be spoiled almost instantly after
Yeah.
the book came out.
Because there were leaks even earlier. And I think it's even necessary to qualify or clarify what qualifies me to even answer a question like that. It's like when you're involved in creating content online for long enough, you just sort of connect with the different people that are doing those things online already. Bloggers, podcasters, Twitterers, or, people that live under rocks and, bang rocks together for electricity. I've met a number of people, and I've sort of involved myself in a lot of those situations, especially when I worked in the video game industry for 4 years, and you just sort of get connected to those people that are working all over the place. And it is unbelievable the amount of convergence that's happening in different areas. Like, things are overlapping that you never thought ever would. For instance, if anybody is familiar with video games, Tim Schafer, the president of Double Fine Productions, he made very popular video games, Psychonauts, Brutal Legend. He worked on Stacking, Costume Quest, a bunch of very incredible games. He's actually being tasked with the new Sesame Street video game. Mm-hmm. And he's known for he's very progressive. He's almost very violent in a way. He's an extremely, extremely good game producer. And there's just sort of a lot of crossover from different things. And that's the trend with the internet at this point and how it crosses over with different industries. One of the things that really gets me is that people were being prosecuted for going to movie theaters, like crappy movies, like the Justin Bieber movie, Never Die.
Never Say Never or something like that.
Yeah, who cares?
I care.
So people were going in with their cell phones and were actually recording the trailers and and uploading them from the theater to a YouTube account, which are then just taken up and eaten up by every major film blog. Like Film Drunk and Naked Robot and absolutely anything out there that at least has the morality enough to take a leaked trailer like that. And isn't it amazing to think that there's such a thing as a leaked trailer?
That's true. I mean, I just feel like there's like the two sides of it where, I would say like I can see the frustration of coming from maybe the creative side of it.
Right.
Being like, not even just like, because a lot of people, especially the more independent filmmakers, I believe the people who did the Banksy documentary.
Right.
That movie, I believe, was available on demand at the same time that it was in theaters.
Yeah.
And their whole thing was, look, the theatric run is just the trailer for the DVD release.
Sure.
But, I mean, as much as I hate the studio system, I can understand, like, look, we're investing a whole lot of money into making this movie.
Yeah.
Like, please don't spoil the end of the movie online before anyone has a chance to see it.
That's a battle you'll never win. Like, going back to Comic Book Guy, that's been happening as long as anyone can remember.
Yeah.
And you know what's interesting on that same point is the movie Hobo with a Shotgun.
Yes.
The director of that is a brand new director. Seriously, he's a real greenhorn.
Movie, and then literally in the last 5 days, I've heard like 7 different people mention this movie.
He's a complete greenhorn. One of the only major pictures that he ever made before that was the fake trailer for this movie in Grindhouse, because both Machete and Hobo with a Shotgun were both fake trailers, and then they became real movies. He was doing an interview on Reddit.com, who in a very popular section called IMA, which is sort of like an interview section.
It's like a Q&A section. I guess that's the best way to
It's almost
describe it.
like a panel, but he did an interview there because he's a big Redditor, he's a big fan of it, and a lot of people asked him, they said to him, "I'm sorry, I pirated your movie because it's not out in theaters, it's not out in wide theaters, it's hard to find, and it's very easy to find online. You can find it on the Pirate Bay, stuff like that, accessible." And you wouldn't believe how cool this guy was with this. He says, he's like, "Sorry, couldn't pay to go see it, but I'm glad you enjoyed it." I mean, it's
well, and I think
propagation is more important these days.
I'd like to believe, and I could be very wrong because you look at something like Scott Pilgrim, but I'd like to believe that if the fans strongly believe in the product, they'll go and see it. They'll spend the money. But then again, you look at something like Scott Pilgrim, which should have been the #1 movie
Yeah.
of that particular release week. Definitely a bad release week choice, putting it up against The Expendables and Eat, Pray, Love.
Yeah.
But it shouldn't have been number 6 in the box office. Like,
Well,
I mean, a lot of the problem was also I saw that movie for free 3 times before it even came out in theaters.
Yeah.
Because they were constantly showing it at Comic-Con. There was like 3 Philly screenings in advance. Like, I
Yeah.
think they made a mistake of showing the movie for free to everybody who would have actually paid to see it when it came out.
Well, the issue at hand is, and this is something that my colleagues at Four Color Rebellion examined
Yeah.
very thoroughly, actually. Everybody at that site, we're all like, one thing is Four Color Rebellion is sort of very fundamentally a Nintendo website, but it's called Four Color Rebellion because it started as a comic books blog.
Yeah.
You know, Four Color, CYMK, etc. And the guy that started it, Nick Luckett, he's an incredibly influential guy now. He actually works at one of the top advertising agencies in the world, and I guarantee if you watch the Super Bowl, you've seen his ad. And he's a huge fan of Scott Pilgrim, and he did like an illustration called Scott Pilgrim versus the Box Office, and it was just an image of Scott Pilgrim being crushed by a giant marquee, and it illustrated so aptly, and his caption was, "This is why nerds can't have nice things."
True.
And the problem is that nerds are outcasts by nature, and when you cash in on things that nerds find important, it tends to be that you go against one of the toughest crowds to please in media. I mean, you're going against people who know the source material extremely well. They are extremely exacting in what they want to see. I mean, talk to any nerd that's a Lord of the Rings fan and ask him his opinion on the Lord of the Rings movies. And you're also finding people who have very little motivation to either leave the house by themselves or without being in a large social situation. So you're sort of like it's almost goes hand in hand with what's happening to the industry at this point with how it's converging with the internet, is that there's this entirely new audience that's being targeted that never was before. Like previously, what's the biggest nerd movie you can think of? Tron, perhaps?
Yeah, Tron Legacy probably would be one of the first ones I'd think of, yeah.
And
I mean, there's
it's
definitely
difficult.
more. I think there's definitely more nerd-centric movies, but they haven't had the box. Like, Paul is nothing but a love letter to nerds, but no one went and saw it, which is a shame because the movie's great.
Yeah, and that's...
Your Highness is the same thing. Your Highness, I think, is as much as it is a bit of a stoner comedy, it's a movie for people who loved D&D as a kid.
Yeah,
But
and there's incredible movies that will never make it to wide appeal, like The Gamers, for instance, which is, if anyone's ever seen, it's by, was it The Drunken
Dead Gentleman?
Dead Gentleman.
Dead Gentleman. I didn't like the full-length version of it, though.
The
Darkness Rising,
the sequel?
the sequel.
Yeah, the sequel wasn't great, but
The original short is brilliant.
if you've ever played Dungeons and Dragons, it's worth your money.
Yeah.
That's for sure. But the problem is that nerds are nerds because they have very particular interests that aren't general interest.
Yeah.
And a lot of the things that are coming to the big screen, like, all right, so you've covered your mainstream superheroes. You know, now you've even got covered with Thor. You got the Hulk. You got literally everybody covered.
We're going through the B list and making our way straight to the C list eventually.
Yeah. And when you get to someone like Scott Pilgrim, sure, it's very popular, but it's a nerd thing at heart, and it's never going to be
such
popular.
a niche group, though.
Exactly.
Because that's a comic that not even a lot of comic book fans really know. It was a comic that you had someone else had to tell you about it for you to find it. It's not like Spider-Man.
That's
where
an
you
internet
can walk
comic.
in. Yeah.
And one thing I am also is I guess you would call me an amateur cartoonist.
I know we're running a little low on time. I wanted to get towards some of your animation. I used to love. You had done a project. There's two things I want to talk about real quick with your animation. The first one is obviously your Valentine's Day card and the scandal that went with that. And the other thing was a project that you had done a while ago, which was a comic a day.
Yeah.
And I don't think you do it as much.
No,
But that for a while, that was one of the most incredible. Was it a comic? I'm not even thinking about a comic. Was a comic a day also the thing where you were literally working out a relationship situation.
Yes, that was titled Left and Leaving. You can actually still find that if you
Left
if
and
you Google.
Leaving was amazing.
Oh, thanks.
I read that constantly, and I think anybody who's ever been in a relationship that ended before you were ready for it to end should read it because it's very relatable. And you run the risk of sometimes there are issues where I'm reading the Sarah Silverman book,
Sure.
The Bedwetter.
Right.
It's her memoirs, and I just actually read a chapter that she wrote about diaries.
Right.
She goes, the thing is with diaries is that there's no point for them because no one should ever read a diary because when you look back at that diary, you're just nothing but embarrassed at how whiny you are. And you run a risk of that in certain parts of that comic, but in the long run, it's a very artistically interesting scope of a relationship.
Yeah.
But I'm sure even for you, looking back at it, you're like, man, I maybe shouldn't have put a few of these in here.
The story behind that, I mean, you can still find it. It didn't, I've had a lot of people that have sort of looked at it, and it still has a pretty decent readership in retrospect. When I was running it, it had probably 500 visitors a day,
nice.
which is an all right. I mean, that's about what you would get with a small press comic book in any of those circumstances. But the story behind it was the title comes from the Weaker Than song, which centers around a breakup. And I know how cliche it sounds to be, but it was my first relationship, and it ended in a very sort of very violent, sort of wrenching apart. And I'd had nothing to do with myself. And I'm an amateur cartoonist. I've been drawing since I was in high school, and I thought, why not draw 4 comics every single day? Yeah. So I would draw them whenever something monumental in my day happened, 3 panels, and that's it. And then at the end of the day, I would scan it and upload it, and et cetera, and so on. I think I carried it out for about 100 days, and you're exactly right. As far as diaries go, one of the things that I went out of my way to sort of do, and it was my philosophy for even doing it in the first place, is that there's like none of the feelings anybody has are unique.
Yeah.
There's billions of people that have existed in the human history, and they've all felt the same things that you have at some point. But there are still tons of people on this planet that maybe in your lifetime will never feel what you feel. So it's worth it to put your feelings and your experience out there in such a way that it can be a story that somebody can relate to it. And I had people come up to me saying, like, thank you for doing this because it helped me through whatever time. And I'm sitting to myself, I'm eating in my underwear thinking, like, what? Me? And it was great. I mean, but there are certainly embarrassing times. I mean, I was super pissed off at my girlfriend. So there were times when, and I know she was reading at the time, and I was like stabbing at her with a philosophical like linoleum knife. Just like one time I even drew something so stupid. I'm just like, I hate you, I hate you, and it was sort of a raw expression. And I got the idea from something that was done by, I can't remember his name, but he does a comics, Pictures for Sad Children.
I don't know that one.
That's a webcomic. If you ever want to read it, will ruin your day consistently because it's extremely depressing, very sparse, very minimalistic, but it's always genius. And he did something where for the entire day, he just like drew little comics about what he was doing. So I kind of took it one step further. And if you want to read that comic, it's about 100 comics long. You can read it in about an hour. It's called Left and Leaving. Just search for it on Google. Right. But you have to type comic because, like I said, it's the title of a Weaker Than song if you don't want to get a page full of lyrics and so forth.
Now, what about and I guess we'll have to make it quick because we are running low on time.
Right.
Can you tell me a little bit about the Valentine's Day card?
Oh, boy.
Massacre.
So that's another thing that kind of comes back to a failed relationship is that, I had the desire to do something romantic, but nobody to focus it towards. So I made video game related comic or Valentine's Day cards that were nerdy and etc. And we threw this up on 4-Color Rebellion. I did a couple more this year as well. One about Minecraft, if anybody loves Minecraft as much as I do. And one of which, the very first one we did was sort of like a Tetris heart. It was
a heart made out of all the Tetris.
Right, Tetris block. And looking back, I actually really hate that piece because I did it all wrong. Yeah. Like certain things are twisted in the way they're not supposed to be. And it passed 1 year. It was very popular, but it passed 1 year without really thinking about it. The next year, when I produced a set of Valentine's Day cards for that, it appeared to be the top link on Dig, when Dig was still popular at the time. And I was looking through the comments, and this one guy's like, I've seen this shirt before. And I was like, what? So it turns out that a retailer, All Saints, who are sort of like the J. Crew of London, a very, very sort of expensive, high fashion retailer, they basically lifted the heart design and printed it on a T-shirt with that like fake weather tee to make it look like it's vintage, and we're selling it for around $200-$300. So there was this long process of where I was like threatening them, and they were threatening me, and the entire time I'm thinking like, Jesus Christ, it's like, this is my design, and why is this happening to me? I'm like, I was a sophomore in college at the time.
You were still in college. I remember this whole thing just as I think it was just when I was getting ready to graduate college. I was like, what the hell? It's
unbelievable. And you wouldn't believe the heights that reached. I rallied all of my friends in the media to help me fight this battle. It was, I talked to all my friends on Kotaku. I think Luke Plunkett, who's the associate editor now, he was very sympathetic to that cause. If anyone reads Go Nintendo, Kevin Cassidy, Raw Meat Cowboy, he was extremely friendly. And it got posted on Gawker. Joystick, I believe, picked it up as well. Every major blog, and So You Thought We Wouldn't Notice, which is a great blog, by the way, about counterfeiting. They picked that story up as well.
All right, so sum up the story. Was justice eventually served in this case?
It was, but I pissed off a lot of British people.
That's okay. Listen, they're still pissed off about the whole America situation, so I think you're okay.
That would explain a lot.
The website is mitchpalooza.com.
Mitchapalooza.org.
Mitchapalooza.org.
Just like old school Mitchapalooza, the party.
Go ahead and check that out. You've got webcomics up there. It's kind of almost like an online resume last time I checked. I'm not sure if you changed it up. A new site will be launched probably by the time this maybe hits. About 2 weeks from now?
Yeah.
All right.
About that, and I hope you go and enjoy it. There's a couple other comic projects that I have listed up there, including, it's mostly nerd stuff, Mother 3 fan translation project I was involved in, and a couple other things relating to the nerd scene. So, I mean, I'm a bit of everywhere. If you manage to see me, follow me on Twitter. I draw a lot.
All right, and what's the Twitter handle?
That's msprout. It's linked on my site, again, mitchapalooza.org.
All right, thanks for stopping by, Mitch. It's been good to see you.
It's raining really hard, and you're making me go out there.